Chapter 24. Miles to Nowhere. Driving at night as thoughts of the most horrific events of his life replayed in his mind, Jim was thankful there wasn't any traffic. In the last 100 miles, he figured there had only been 4 running vehicles. Then again, he thought, had events not occurred that caused there to be so few cars on the road, my mother would still be alive. I wouldn't have had to bury the girl I loved, and I wouldn't be driving in the middle of nowhere in a car that smells like death. Jim looked over to the passenger seat where Larry was sleeping. At least I haven't lost you yet, he thought. Turning his attention back to the road, Jim's eyes focused on the crack in the windshield where the bullet had struck after passing through Mary. Each time his eyes focused on the cracks, Jim wished that he could have done more to protect her. Since this all began, he wished that he had some knowledge of how to survive in this new world. Jim then thought about the way things had been before, how his life had been sleep, school, video games, weed, and surfing with his friends. It wasn't until the past several weeks that he thought about all the things his mother would tell him about what was going on in the news. He remembered very little now, but clearly recalled thinking at the time that she took things too seriously. Now it had all changed. The life he now lived was hard and deadly, not knowing who to trust, or even if the next person you met would shoot you to take what you had. Nevertheless, Jim felt he had to let others know what was coming. Jim and Larry drove east, stopping at towns that still seemed safe. Those towns were mostly the smaller country towns. They knew that larger cities would only bring an end to the journey they were now on. Jim thought about many of the towns they had stopped at, and how he had never in his life wanted to live in such small places. However, now he could never see himself going back to a major city, cities that were now tearing themselves apart without power, water, or food coming in. Jim figured they had stopped at a few dozen towns each time, telling the residents what they had witnessed. Many didn't believe them until they saw the condition of their car, with the dried blood and bullet holes. Whether they believed them or not, Jim figured they had been warned of the coming threat, which was more than they knew before. "Wake up! Wake up!" Jim said as he slapped Larry across the chest with the back of his right hand. "We need to find fuel." Jim had been so lost in thought that he hadn't noticed that the gas gauge was almost on empty. "Keep your eyes out for a car." Larry rubbed his eyes. "What? Are we there? Are we there? Are we where? All we're doing is driving east. Where the hell do you think we're going? Never mind that. Just look for a car. We need gas." "Sorry, man. A habit of waking up in a moving car. I'm watching." After a few more miles, Larry spotted a reflection just off the road. "There." "Where?" Jim asked as he slowed down. Before Larry could respond, their headlights lit up the car. "I'm going to drive past it a little. Watch for people." Jim slowly drove by the car, looking into the darkness on his side as Larry watched the area on his. "Anything?" Jim asked after about 100 yards. "Nope." With that, Jim brought the car to a stop and put it in reverse, backing up to where the car sat alone on the side of the road. "I don't want to spend much time here," Jim said as he looked around. "I think we're getting pretty good at this." "What is this, the 8th one?" Larry asked. As he slowed the car, Jim felt he still had to go over what was going to happen. "All right. When we stop, jump out with the hammer and punch. I'll grab the jugs." Feeling the car was slow enough to step out, Larry opened his door and quickly ran for the rear of the abandoned car with a hammer in one hand and a steel punch in the other. Quickly dropping to the ground, Larry rolled slightly under the car, placing the punch up to the gas tank, then called out to Jim, "You ready?" "Yes." Jim stood with a milk jug in each hand with the tops cut off to easily fit under the cars. Jim could hear Larry strike the punch once, then again. "Jug!" Larry said as he raised the hammer in the air for Jim to take and replace it with the first jug. Larry filled jug after jug from the hole in the tank, and Jim emptied them into a 5-gallon container. "Okay, it's full. I have to put it in the car," Jim told Larry, who had placed his finger over the hole. "Hurry up. The fumes are getting a little strong down here." Jim raced to the car, opened the gas cap, and inserted the funnel. As he did every time, he longed for the days when he could just pump it straight into the car instead. When Jim had finished emptying the container into the car, he moved quickly back to Larry and handed him the milk jug to start the process all over. On the 5th milk jug, Larry slid out from under the car. "That's it, bro. She's all tapped out." "Damn, that probably only gives us a half tank." Jim was concerned. "Okay, I'll put this in and we'll get back on the road. It should get us to the next town and we can hopefully fill up there." With the close call of running out of gas behind them, Jim found himself looking at the gas gauge almost more than the road. Running out of gas and possibly losing the car was something neither wanted at this point, and both were happy to see a sign come into view. With the sun rising behind it, they couldn't make it out until the headlights were shining on it. "Welcome to Jetmore." "What, are they asking for more jets?" Larry said in an attempt to make a joke. "Don't go pissing the people off with jokes like that when we stop," Jim requested of his best friend. As they entered the town, they kept watch for any reason to hit the gas and move through it as fast as they could. "You seeing anyone?" Larry asked Jim, who saw only empty buildings and abandoned cars. "No, but it is early," Jim said, feeling a little uneasy about the area as they drove farther into the small town. "Okay, there's something wrong here. We should have seen one person by now. This is almost as bad as if they were all running after us," Larry said. "Hold on, what is that posted on the doors and windows?" Jim asked as he pulled up to a nearby store and jumped out. Walking over to the sticker that seemed to be on every building in town, Jim began to read it aloud as Larry came up behind him. Posted. By order of the U.S. government and the United Nations, all citizens are hereby ordered to turn in all firearms. Those who fail to do so will be arrested and imprisoned. Clearly marked UN vehicles will be around for weapons collection. "What the hell is this?" Larry spat. "We're under attack, and they want everyone to turn in their weapons?" "Where is everyone? Is anybody here?" Jim shouted, hoping to get a response. Larry and Jim both looked at the town around them. Nobody replied. The only sounds they heard were dogs barking and birds chirping. "Jim, bro, we need to get gas and get the hell out of here," Larry said, grabbing Jim by the arm and pulling him back to the car. Gas in an abandoned town was easy to come by, along with more jugs to carry extra. After a half hour of gathering supplies, Jim and Larry were grateful to see the ghost town disappearing in the rearview mirror. "Where do you think they all went?" Jim asked from the passenger seat as Larry drove. "No clue, bro. Not sure I want to find out either. The sign back there said Larnd is the next town we should pass through. Maybe they will know something." Jim reached over, picked up the pistol he had found and looked it over. "You know, I never wanted, nor saw any point in a person having one of these. It's amazing how quickly those ideas change." Miles passed as Jim and Larry thought about the last town they had stopped at, neither able to shake the feeling of a town with no people, or even a sign of where they had gone. "We should be getting close. The last sign I saw said 5 miles to Larnd." Larry couldn't take the silence any longer. He felt that if he thought about the world around him too much, then it would swallow him. "Yeah, that should be it up ahead." Jim pointed through the windshield at buildings in the distance. They could see people as they approached, and both were relieved they were not driving into another ghost town. Larnd, Kansas. Population 4,054, Jim said, reading the sign as they passed. "Man, I'm glad to see people," Larry said with a smile. "Wait, stop the car," Jim said as he spotted a white bus with 2 bold blue letters on the side. "What?" Larry asked, bringing the car to a stop. His question was answered when he spotted people lined up to board the bus. "Shit!" Larry put the car in reverse and began backing up, only to be stopped after 50 feet by a large white military vehicle with marked on the side. The sight stunned Larry. Jim yelled, "Drive, damn it!" Larry faced forward and quickly put the car in drive while slamming his right foot down on the accelerator. The people in line for the bus all turned and began shouting, "Go, go, go, run!" It was as if they were cheering them on. Larry quickly turned down the first street they came to with his foot, holding the pedal down to the floor, not knowing where he was going, but knowing that he didn't want to be here. Accelerating down the narrow street, Larry and Jim heard a loud explosion and knew it was gunfire. "They're shooting at us!" Larry shouted. Jim looked over and saw Larry staring at something, but he couldn't make out what, though he could feel the car slowing down. "Let's go, man." "Why are we slowing down?" Jim asked. "I think I wet myself," Larry said, looking down between his legs. "What? We don't have time for this. Let's go!" Jim shouted, urging Larry to get the car going faster. Removing his left hand from the steering wheel, Larry reached between his legs. When he brought them back up, he could clearly see that the wetness wasn't urine but blood. "Oh," Larry said as his arms went limp and he began to fall over in the seat. "Larry!" Jim shouted again at the sight of his best friend's blood as he watched him fall over. As the car rolled to a stop, lightly bumping into another along the street, soldiers with blue helmets came from all sides with rifles drawn. "Hands up!" they screamed with a thick accent that Jim couldn't make out as he gripped the pistol in his hand, wanting to shoot back at those who had just killed his best friend. Overcome by fear, Jim let the pistol drop to the floor and slowly held his hands up for the UN soldiers to see. Seconds later, Jim was dragged through the window after a soldier broke it out with the stock of his rifle. As he was being pulled from the car, he spotted what Larry had been looking at. Alongside the rearview mirror was the hole where the bullet had entered.